Good morning. Happy Saturday. And hey there, hi there, ho there to everyone. Thank you all for joining us on this Saturday, May 17th. It's wonderful to have you join us yet again. Today's topic, one of our mini seminars, we always do mini seminars on mental health. And so today's one is going to be an interesting deep dive topic on the trauma of pain. And so that one's going to be moderated and led by Dr. Marcia Treadwell. But first, what I want to be able to do is just say hello and thank you. Several things to just bring to your attention. Number one, help me in celebrating our 25th anniversary. So, yes, we were officially a nonprofit in the year 2000. So, 2025 is our 25th anniversary. Yay! So we will be having a 25th anniversary gala, and that was going to be the date is going to be January of 2026. So that gives you guys plenty of time to come to California and get that. Mark your calendar. So I'll have the exact date. It's going to be on a Saturday, and I'll have the exact date. All right. Also, we have World Sickle Cell Day. And this year we are partnering with GASCO, led by Biba Tinga. So that's on June 19th, our 24 annual marathon. So 24 hours, which means that at some point you'll be able to come on in and see what we're doing, hopefully be able to participate. Also in September, for our, I call it 17th/19th annual, because it's really the 19th annual, our summit. This year, it is September 17th through the 20th, which is Wednesday through Saturday. And it's going to be in San Jose. Should I sing the song? Do you all know the song? Written by Burt Bacharach and sung by Dionne Warwick? I think so. So we're hoping that you all will join us either virtually or come on into San Jose, which is part of Northern California. So our Northern California folks will be able to join us quite easily. So this is where we will be, September 17th through the 20th, in San Jose for our 17th/19th annual summit. Yay. All right. So what I like to be able to do right now is thank the wonderful Dr. Marcia Treadwell for accepting to come on in and to lead and moderate this important topic, trauma of pain. Dr. Treadwell? Oh,
Hello.
yeah.
Happy Saturday and congratulations on your 25th anniversary. So exciting. And
Thank you.
also exciting to have your summit in Northern California. So looking forward to attending so many just important things that Cayenne Wellness does for the sickle cell
Thank
community.
you. I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. So, welcome everyone to the seminar. I am Marcia Treadwell. I am a clinical psychologist. I'm the co-director of the UCSF Sickle Cell Center of Excellence. And I'm just so excited to moderate this mini seminar on mental health and sickle cell disease. Our topic today is the trauma of pain. And it won't be just about the trauma, but also about resilience and how people can learn to cope, how they can feel engaged with their care, set up coping support systems, and so on. And I am super pleased to bring on board four sickle cell warriors: Camille Linton, Noah James, Tanika Hoffman, and Scott Solis. And I'm going to ask each of them now to say a little bit about themselves and also talk about their journey, their experiences living with sickle cell disease. And each one is going to take that on, and then we'll move into another question, and then we'll have more conversation. So I'm going to start with Tanika. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your journey with sickle cell disease.
Of course, first, thank you so much for inviting me. And to all the warriors, hello, you all look great. My name is Tanika Hoffman. I am the founder and the executive director of the Sickle Cell Coalition of Maryland. I also have sickle cell disease, and I'm also an entrepreneur. I have an NGO slash coffee shop in Ubon Ratchathani, Thailand. And I am trying my best just as a warrior to take it one day at a time. And one of the things that I often tell warriors is that you can do anything you put your mind to. I have a master's degree and lived all over the world and been to 20 plus countries in spite of sickle cell disease. And one of the ways that I've been successful is with planning, knowing when to rest. Like if I have a day of work, I'll take 3 or 4 hours to do the work and take a nap. So looking for ways to boost your energy or knowing when to stop. Like for instance, I went to the market this morning. I am on the East Coast. There's a market in DC at the Capitol. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to go to this Capitol market and also be here today, I need to take a nap right before this event. And so that's what I did. I just took a 45-minute nap. So for me, I've learned to navigate my sickle cell by putting in little things that build up myself and my body, whether it's taking a nap, reading a book, watching something funny, and just being in my body and looking for the signs of pain, whether it's just minuscule and I feel a glitch or I feel off, I'll drink some water or say, okay, let's calm down for a little bit. But thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to hearing all of your stories.
Thanks, Tanika. I saw Noah nodding his head. So why don't you jump in, Noah, and tell us about your journey?
Hello, everyone. My name is Noah James. Thank you, Dr. Marshall, for being here. I am from the Bay Area, California, and I too have sickle cell disease. In addition to being deaf and hard of hearing, similar to Tanika, I kind of took on this philosophy of I could do anything I would like to do. Some of it may be difficult, some of it may be um, some of it may take time, a longer journey, but I'm committed to seeing the dreams, the aspirations, the goals of mine come true. A little bit about myself. I am currently the co-director of the Pull Up, as well as client manager for sickle cell anemia awareness in San Francisco. I've worked and volunteered with client wellness for some time, and um, I'm on a good side of my pain journey right now. I want to say this time last year, you would have seen me in the hospital bed almost regularly, and I'll share a little bit more about that later. But I am a professional dancer, an author, um, life coach, uh, development associate, brother, friend, you name it. Anything that I could be in this life, I would try to be. And I'm happy to be here with all of you.
Thanks so much, Noah. I look forward to hearing more about your dancing. But I'm going to turn it over to Camille right now and tell us about your journey.
Hi, my name is Camille Linton. I'm also a sickle cell warrior. I'm 41, and as Tanika said, I do a lot. I love to travel. I do not let sickle cell, get in the way. I also a certified medical assistant. Um, about to go back to school to do my LVN, but sickle cell is kind of getting in the way. But we continue to fight through it. As Noah said, I think I can do anything. I don't let anything uh, become too hard for me because I feel like I'm normal. I'm just like everybody else. Yes, I suffer from this disease, but it's, only I can limit myself, you know, in anything I do, so I try not to let sickle cell get in the way. But as Tanika said, you have to plan. You have to know when it's time to rest. I won't go too much into detail, how I do that, or but yeah, this year's been rough. It's been rougher than usual, uh, and but I'm fighting through it. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
All right, thank you, Camille. And last but not least, Scott, I saw a shout out to you on the chat, so go ahead.
Uh, good afternoon from Orlando, Florida. That's where I'm currently located. So, just a little bit about my name is Scott Solis, by the way. I am 33 years old. Uh, I do have sickle cell type SS. Just a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Bronx, New York. That's where I grew up. I do have a twin brother as well who does have sickle cell type SS. And just growing up with sickle cell, it was just me and my twin brother. That's all we knew, and we didn't really have a community around us. So it was just me and him just growing with sickle cell, just learning about it. My parents did a really good job with with the pain management and the treatments and stuff like that. But I wasn't really aware that there was a community out there. So basically how my story was that I went to school. I went to elementary school and middle school in New York. I moved to Florida when I was about 16 years old. And from there, when I got to Florida, my health it got a lot better because the warmer weather and just going through the motions. But as I kept going, I went to Florida A&M University. I studied civil engineering. There was times where I did struggle with my sickle cell, and I had to miss school, I had to miss work, and things of that nature. But I persevered. I kept pushing through, and by the grace of God, I managed to graduate with my civil engineering degree in 4 years, which is really hard to do. And from there, I just moved to Orlando, Florida, because there was more job opportunities out here. So currently, right now, I do work as a highway engineer, um, and that's the job that pays the bills. So I got to pay the bills. But on my spare time, as you can see, I'm an artist. I do like to draw, and I like to make comic illustrations about sickle cell, or just drawing anything that I'm feeling at the time. And when I started to notice about how much people cared about my story, I started sharing my story about sickle cell more. So I started to not only do art, but also rebrand and also teach about sickle cell, teaching people about sickle cell, my story, and then how they can support people with sickle cell as well. So I started just looking into the community. I ran into events like the Sickle Cell Consortium, Cayenne Wellness, and I started realizing that there is a community out there for me. So right now, I do serve as an independent patient caregiver advocate for the consortium, and I'm just trying to grow and just basically share my story and let people know that you can do whatever you want, put your mind to, even if you have a disease. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I'm here. I'm here to share my story. I'm just trying to be here and provide inspiration and hope as well. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And all of you really are very inspiring in what you've accomplished in your philosophy about I can do anything, but then you have to pace yourself and plan and so on. So I want to have you come back right now, Scott, and talk with us about how pain affects your daily life. How has it affected your relationships? And how has it affected your mental health? And then I'll ask each of you to weigh in on that one. But let's start with Scott.
So in my daily life, you know, I'm not, I don't really have too much pain in my daily life. I do a good job in managing my disease. But when pain does happen, of course, I'm very communicative about. I communicate with everyone. from my employers to my significant other, to my friends and family. I'm very transparent on, how I'm feeling, and how it affects my relationships. A lot of people are aware that I do have sickle cell, so they tend to ask questions on how they can be supportive, and I'm very appreciative of that. So a lot of people are willing to learn about sickle cell, and I'm very grateful for that. I guess the relationships that I'm building with these people, they want to invest in my personal life and what I'm going through. So that makes it easier for me to just teach people about what I'm going through and how pain just affects my daily life. And as far as my relationships with people, I'm married, so my wife, she's very understanding, and she's been by my side, every day. She's willing to learn about sickle cell. She doesn't have the trait. She doesn't have any sickle cell, so I know that's important. But um, when I'm in pain, she's the first one by my side, and I'm just appreciative of that. And yeah, just in my daily life, I just try to do whatever I can to just feel, normal, per se, but also, let not let sickle cell, control my life as well. Of course, when I need a rest, I rest. A lot of people kind of tell me I'm a little hard headed because, I don't stop working regardless. I'll be in a hospital bed and I try to do whatever I can, but, rest is important. So I definitely try to, take some time to just rest and, let sickle cell, do its thing, and of course just heal, because that's very important. So.
All right. And any thoughts about how pain has affected your mental health?
Oh, mental health. Yes, yes. That's a great question. A lot of people don't really understand um, what we go through. They can sympathize all day, but unless you have the disease, it's very hard. So there is times where sickle cell does affect my confidence, um, and I had to really, really look myself in the mirror and really just give myself words of encouragement. Sometimes I'll say, I look in the mirror and give myself a mantra. Today is your day. You're gonna be fine. Push through, and nothing can stop you. So with that being said, it is days where it does take over, and I do need help. So I do have a therapist as well that I get to express myself, and let them know that this is how it's affecting me as a man. There's certain things as a man that you feel like you're not good enough, to comparing yourself to others, and how that plays a role. So mentally, it's something that you have to be very, very strong to really deal with. And I have a good support system around me, friends who are telling me that I'm an inspiration, or my therapist is really working with me on building my confidence and stuff like that. So some days are rough, some days are good, but at the end of the day, it's an ongoing battle. So.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And again, it's important to talk about that, the inspiring part of your life, but then how you have, there are things that really can bring you down at times. So I want to ask Camille the same question. How does pain affect your daily life, your relationships, and your mental health?
So when I was younger, it really affected my daily life. I did everything. When I was in school, I did everything. Now, I think because of all the complications of sickle cell, it's been affecting my daily life a lot. So I'm currently dealing with, severe AVN, and trying to find, a surgeon, to do a surgery that nobody else wants to do. But I do have a lot of pain on the regular. Currently, I am in an active crisis, and I think it was because sometimes, like Scott said, I'm hard headed and I want to do everything. Um, and so, like this weekend was my partner's birthday, and I've been up for days. And because of that, now I'm in a full blown crisis, and, trying to fight that off, because I want to do more, but, um, mentally, it, I won't say it, I get too depressed about it because I do have a lot of friends and family that, are very supportive that I can talk to, that understand when I can't do it. I mean, I can't do it. Like, you guys are always going to be there. There will be other times, you know, um, but sometimes, I tend to like, when it comes to accomplishments, I tend to compare myself to other people. Like I should be, at the age that I am, I should be, doing things that, this family member is doing or have done. Uh and um and I'm not gonna lie, I get jealous sometimes, that I can't or I haven't done it yet. But I think you have to have a strong and solid mindset, to know that, you know, although you want to be normal and you want to be like everybody else, not all times you're going to be able to be like everybody else. You need to know when to push the brakes. You need to know when to listen to your body. You need to know when to listen to your heart and know that, in due time things will come to you, and you will get to where you want to be, you know but it gets very, very hard, a lot of times, when you can't do it, when you're in the hospital for, weeks at a time, and you know and you see life going on while you're in this hospital bed, fighting this crisis and whatever else is going on as far as complications with sickle cell. Um, but having, the supporters, having your advocate, working with Cayenne Wellness has helped me a lot. It's kind of, made my mental health a lot better in a way, because before I never used to, guest speak. And because of Dr. Rowley, now I try to do as much guest speaking as I can. And it helps, when you can talk about your journey, when you can communicate with other people that, are just like you, and have fought the battles that you have fought. Uh, just understand your day-to-day struggle, so yeah, being a guest speaker helps, mentally, and it kind of pushes you to, want to do more, as far as advocating, for sickle cell. And that, that definitely, I think it helps a lot of people, not just, me, because you're not just sitting in bed doing nothing. You're in some way, something you said is going to help somebody else. Even if it's just one person, it's going to help someone else, so yeah, that's it's something that you have to learn and grow on, on how to deal with it, in a positive way and not a negative way. But I think in the end, you're always gonna continue to fight.
Thanks so much. And again, thanks for being here, even though you aren't feeling well. And I appreciate what you're bringing up about confidence, and we'll come back to that. But I'd like to ask Noah the same question again. How has pain affected your daily life, relationships, and mental health?
Whew, Dr. Marsha, you know how hard it is. Let's see. I wanna open up this question a little bit more. I'm gonna drop in and I'm gonna come right back out. Uh, for me, it's been hard. Um, it's been heavy. It's been almost like a weight in the chest. It's been a lot of grief, a lot of depression, a lot of racism I've had to face, a lot of anger, um, a lot of pain. For me, similar to Camille, I deal with bone infarction and ABM in my spine and in my legs. But the discovery of what that was a fight. When they learned about it, they didn't believe that I was having pain. My blood was not showing signs that, this pain was real. So the fight to just simply be believed has been hard. Um, I had an active childhood, but with consequences. Like, even with sickle cell camp and trying to play sports and trying to be amongst the community, it came with a lot of suffering and consequences and crises and, having to sit my behind back down and recover. But I want to highlight specifically my journey in the hospital because in hematology, it's like this hub of protection that um, keeps you kind of away from the world. But as soon as you hit 17, 18, it's night and day. You walk into the jungle, you walk into the wild. If you don't grow up in spaces like Children's Hospital where they prioritize sickle cell and give it the treatment it deserves, you walk into general care. And usually because of racism and things like that, they don't believe you. And God forbid you look half as decent as you got some clothes on, you got your teeth is brushed, your skin is clear. Oh, you're not in pain. No, you're not looking like that. You're not in pain. And so I've had to face a lot of that. And it has been hard. Um, um, Also too, I want to say like these last 5 years alone in dealing with bone pain and trying to figure out how to understand the differences between chronic pain and acute crises and things like that. I've witnessed in my support network, friends of mine pass away, warriors pass away over situations that don't make sense. Like these these transitions should not be happening to warriors, especially if they could just be heard. I know many of you have seen many things on social media where people are being abused and just not heard when it comes to their pain experience. And I'm I'm trying to find the best way to say uh, you kind of try to morph and shift and adjust your identity to advocate for yourself and speak with whoever you're speaking with, especially in the doctor, or any hospital setting, really, so that they can understand you as a person, but also understand your experience as a warrior is unique. Like it's not the same. My sickle cell crisis is not the same as Scott's and Camille's and Tanika. Like we all suffer differently, and it seems like sometimes they try to group us and say, okay, hydroxyurea is going to work for everybody, or gene therapy is going to work for everybody. And so I'm throwing things out there. Hopefully, we get to talk back to each other soon. But that has been something that has been so frustrating for me, and I've been trying to find ways to be a voice for my friends and family and supporters and other warriors. And that's why I really wanted to anchor into this work because I just feel like it's just unnecessary how many lives we've lost simply because doctors don't have the humility. Some doctors don't have the humility to just listen to us, and to try to understand us as people first, and not opioid addicts or people who are marginalized or uneducated or incapable in any way, shape, or form. So I'll stop there. And then you said something about relationships, right, Dr. Marsha?
Yes.
Okay, so my mom and I was raised by a single mother. Shout out to all the moms out there and the mothers who are warriors. And we really had to learn how to speak our language, especially for me being deaf and hard of hearing, and knowing some sign but not a lot of sign language. Had to learn social cues with my family, but then that taught me how to share with my friends, and like Scott was saying, get resources and accommodations to support myself through work and education, through opportunities, right? So going into the real world and saying, okay, I don't want to claim that I am disabled, but I do live with a disability. What does that look like? How can I navigate my life through that lens, but still be a fully capable person? And so, there's nuggets and things there that I can share, but that has come from being learning how to be comfortable with speaking and sharing my story and advocating for myself, which a lot of times is not easy, especially if you grow up in a black parent household. When sometimes, some old school traditional family, they'd say be seen and not heard, or try not to speak too much, or things like that. So it's hard to speak from the heart and to share your story, but um, I think with time you get there and you create that support with your community, and you share as you grow.
Thanks so much. And there's so many themes that are coming up in common. So yeah, I'll let Tanika answer this question, and then I'll ask you all one more, and then let's open it up for more of a dialogue. So go ahead, Tanika.
I like to think of it in pockets. So, like, for example, my professional life, one of the things that I struggle with is for my whole life, I've been in gifted classes, told I'm the, cream of the crop academically, get in the top schools, get the amazing corporate executive job, and then realize that my body can't handle the demand of the corporate job. And then having to reevaluate my life as well as my career path and figure out how I could make a living with this disease. And especially when you're in a competitive executive program like I was, it's not something that you have the freedom to share. That you have a disability, because you're expected to perform. And so with me, it was very difficult trying to figure out what is my second best passion and what does that mean? Do I stay in corporate America or do I leave? And can I handle the stress? And I actually ended up leaving, which led me to my master's in international development and working abroad in human rights. But now that I am about 10, 12 years away from corporate America and still know I have a passion, one of the hardest things is to see all my friends who were in that executive program now making $250,000, $500,000 a year. And I'm like, dang, like even if I were to go back into the corporate world, I know for a fact that my body can't handle the stress working 24 hours, even with my team understand, because at the time I worked at JP Morgan, and that's the United States biggest bank after Bank of America. And it just was a lot of pressure. And though mentally I can handle it, I knew that my body couldn't handle it. And a lot of things that we don't talk about in the sickle cell community is that 35 years old, 40 plus is considered geriatric in sickle cell. And I have yet to see an institution or any of our sickle cell organizations focus on what does it look like once you're out of your 20s with sickle cell. We're one of the first generations making it to 30, 40, 50. Well, what does that look like? What does that mean from a body perspective? I too developed a vascular necrosis in my shoulders, my hips, and infarcts in my legs because I wasn't believed and my pain wasn't believed. But not only that, the staff didn't have the tools that they needed to actually diagnose it until I went to a bigger institution. And one of the things that has mentally impacted me is like, wow, they really don't believe me. And so that was a theme that was constantly coming up once I found the sickle cell center, and I was on track to becoming healthy again. So it was recommended, hey, you need to go, speak with a mental health specialist, because I've always just been an honest person. So it's really hard when someone is basically calling you a liar when you've been raised in a very strict Christian household and you're told not to lie, and fighting that system, this systematic health industrial complex of what it is, what is in America, where it's profit over health. And we have a system that doesn't value the patient. And then we have a system that has not repented from its transgressions on the Black community, whether that be in sickle cell or experimentation or taking advantage of lack cells, or the young lady that is currently incubated a baby right now, but she's brain dead in Georgia. And so the history of being African American, being a person of color, and fighting a system that was not set up with you really takes a mental toll on you. And I really think it happens in increments. You're at children's when you're peds, and it's really safe and it's great. And then once you hit that 18 to 21 frame, you're kicked out, and you're kicked out into a world where there's fewer hematology. So you might be seeing an oncologist versus a hematologist. And a lot of oncologists have no experience with sickle cell, and you don't have the support of a Children's National, for example, or Children's Oakland, where there are social workers and community health workers. And how, as a community, do we build out programs so that our warriors who are transitioning into adulthood, transitioning into university or trade school, how do we catch them before they fall? We really need to focus on building out programs at 13 and 14 and hold their hand as they transition to adulthood, and have those warriors have like ambassadors, for example, or a network that they could connect with when they're sitting in the ED for 7 hours with no pain medication and no one is helping them. And I think of it as like a tower. There's a brick, okay, it happens, this month I'm being told I'm lied to. Another brick, oh, now I'm getting kicked out. And that mental brick that's constantly stacking is eventually going to fall over. And what that fall over could look like is depression. It could look like suicide ideation. It could look like pulling back, dropping out of school. And what we don't want is, now that our warriors are progressing into adulthood, is for them to really excel. It's nothing, it's already hard having sickle cell, but I've met so many warriors who are highly educated and just need extra support. They can get through the classes fine, but a lot of us deal with fatigue because of our blood cells only lasting 20 to 30 days. And a professor isn't going to understand that. A supervisor isn't going to understand that. You're in a competitive executive program. They just want results. They don't really care about your disease and what's happening. They want to make sure that you're profitable because they paid X amount for you to be in this program. And so for me, navigating corporate America has been very, very difficult with sickle cell disease, but I had to learn little things like, okay, I have to take a nap if I'm going to do a 10-hour day. So instead of eating a long lunch, it's like, let me go in my car and take a nap. These are things that the world doesn't see, these little things that we do to prepare. I fly a lot, so I have a routine. I know I need to put on compression socks. I know I need to have a big jug of water when I'm flying. I know that I need to make sure the day or two before I go get infusions for fluids and pain medicine so that I can sustain that 24-hour flight to Bangkok and then another 5-hour flight to Ubon Ratchathani. But it's a learning process. And I would say, don't feel bad if you don't quite know what works for you just yet, because every day is a different day. But as you learn your body and as you grow, you can realize and prevent certain things. And that also goes back to, holding the hand of the next generation that's about to transition into adult world. We cannot let our warriors continue to transition alone, because it's not good for their mental health, it's not good for their disease state, and it's not good for their family to watch and be advocates and probably already exhausted because you've already been with your warrior from birth to 1821. So, how do we support our warriors wholeheartedly when they're transitioning and making sure that they have the tools and the skills to be able to navigate a systemically racist medical system?
Thanks so much. You all have raised so many incredible points, and the chat has been lighting up a bit. And so I wanted to keep you on again, Tanika, to respond to the question. It's conflicting being a high performing person, limited by our body's capacities. How do we do both? And so if you can respond to that, Tanika, but then others, please also jump in after she talks about. You talked about a little bit, but just what else can you say to help here?
Really, for me, it was understanding self-care for myself, and listening to my body, and also finding allies, whether it's at your job or in your friend community or in the sickle cell community, to help you navigate. Like, for example, when I had Black managers in my executive program, I felt so much more comfortable after gauging who they were, explaining what sickle cell disease is versus my white, supervisor counterparts. I had to gauge who they were first before I opened up. So it's almost like using discernment in a work setting to make sure you full heartedly trust that individual that you're sharing with. But outside of the workplace, you also need to vet friends and family. I've had situations where friends and family will bring up my disease back to me like in a spiteful way. So it's just like really navigating who you can trust, and then understanding what is important to you. So if my calendar is booked for the entire week, I always set at least one full day for myself, no work. So whether that's going to a market, going to the spa, getting your nails done, doing your own nails, doing an Epsom salt, whatever is bath, and whatever is fun for you, take the time to relax. I had to teach myself that at the end of the day, the business will continue without me. So I need to prioritize myself. Yes, excel, but as fast as if I, got sick and went to the hospital, they would have my position filled that quickly. So just being mindful of when you're in corporate settings, who you working for, what is the atmosphere, what is the culture, and navigating that with your own judgment and experiences, as well as finding allies to help you walk through. And it's always good to identify in a corporate setting an executive who would kind of be like your sponsor, where you have a trusted relationship, where you can ask professional questions, you can share if you're feeling discrimination, and it's a safe place, and that high executive person will look out for you. Another thing that I do is I have life coaches. So whatever your field is, going into LinkedIn, finding people who are very successful in their career and asking them, hey, can I just meet with you? People love talking about themselves. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yes, this is my career, this is my advice, and building out your network. I think that's very important in medical space, corporate space, having a very strong network to feed into you, and then to also encourage you, when you feel down. And religion is also, something that is very important. It doesn't matter what, religious denomination or anything that you're a part of, but if it gives you peace, then you should participate. So just being mindful of where you're at in your life. Don't feel upset if you haven't excelled to the point of your, counterparts. They're not dealing with a chronic illness. You are, and navigating it that way by bringing in a network and community is how I've been able to jump over the hurdles, especially in corporate America.
Thanks so much. Scott or Noah, other thoughts about your body, your body's capacities, and you have a desire to do something and you just can't always do it. I do love what Tanika said about finding the second best passion. So let's hear more from, you're ready, Scott, to respond.
Yeah, Tanika's waking it up. I like it. Just definitely, it's interesting because most sickle cell warriors really don't know what they want to do in their career. So I really feel like that's very important. Like the job that you have is very important to your energy levels. I work a white collar job, which is an engineer. In the engineering field, I just sit behind a desk and I'd be on the computer, from 9 to 5. But um, there's other jobs out there like the blue collar jobs that we may not be able to do. So you have to really be considerate of what you're doing in your career field, how much energy you're expending in that career field as well. Now, something that I like to do after I work, I take a lunch break, um, and I get back to work. But after work, I like to incorporate naps. I'll take a nap right after work, maybe an hour and a half, because like Nivea mentioned, I know she's a hard worker, but you have to, if you know that if you have other things that you want to do or other things you want to accomplish, like your side goals, your dreams and your passions, those naps will help you, will restore that energy, and you can, basically get whatever you want done after, you get that nap in. That usually helps me. Another thing, a lot of people don't really think about is your diet. Now, your diet is very important. You want to consume things that are, rich in iron, basically things that keep your energy levels up. If you're consuming junk food, if you're consuming things that aren't really healthy, then that can bring your energy down as well. So things that you consume in your body is very, very important. And your social habits as well. Um, Another thing, people that really don't think about is the people that surround you. If you have negative people in your life, that affects your energy, that affects your health. So you want to have people that's positive, that's always thinking about, you know, one thing that I like to, a quote that I really like is that, small-minded people talk about people, average-minded people talk about events, and then I think it goes like it's a saying like, and then genius people talk about ideas. So who are you talking about? Who are you around? What are they talking about? What are who? So the people that surround you and the things that you consume on social media or in the internet as well does affect your energy levels. So if you want to be as high performing as possible, watch what you consume. You know, incorporate naps, um, and just know at the end of the day, like, rest is important. You can't do everything. If your body is not up for it, listen to your body, because at the end of the day, nothing really matters if your body's not cooperating. So that's all I have.
Yeah, that was one of my struggles when I first got into corporate. I would do things like forget to eat lunch, because you're like working at your computer and you're like, oh, if I take a break and go upstairs and get something to eat, I'm going to get behind. And I had learned very quickly I needed to stop because I would start having pains in my back. Another thing that popped in my mind that I've noticed that really helps with my sickle cell is exercising. Because I have a vascular necrosis, I can't run. So what I did is I did some research and found out that you might be able to like extend the period of like core decompression surgeries by going to therapy, water therapy, to build up muscle around that bone. So you're, focusing in on the muscle and not the bone. So I did a year of therapy. And then after my body got strong, and this is water therapy, I started to swim at my gym, and I take water aerobics and stretching in the pool, and it's become very, very calming. And what I like about it is I'm building muscle tone, I'm being healthy, I'm moving my body. And I notice when I'm in the gym, my crises, like the length of time when I'm in the hospital, is dramatically less. Like I used to be in the hospital like 2 weeks to a month. My last hospitalization that I had in January, it was 1 week. And I've noticed that when I'm on my fitness, it's just something about the length of the crises stay is just a little bit shorter, but it's also relaxing. And it's also the idea of you have to figure out what is good for you from like a workout standpoint. Like I wouldn't say a warrior just go in and start lifting 100 pounds, but finding an instructor or going to a gym and learning about fitness in your body and what makes sense will also build you up stronger, even if you have like a more physical type job that's a little more demanding. And even if you're working in corporate, making sure you stand up, making sure you're stretching so that your blood is circulating and not being at risk of clotting or even sickling because you're in the chair for 9 hours and you don't go take a lunch break because you're just like glued to your screen. So I have found some success working in the gym, working out in the gym. I saw a question about the difference between acute and chronic pain. Acute pain would be like your pain crises, something that comes on that is very sporadic, and it involves pain medication or eventually you going to the ED or being hospitalized. I like to think of chronic pain as the pain that is a result of the damage that has happened from that acute crisis. It could start off very subtle. It can come and go, but eventually chronic pain, anything after 6 months of a constant pain is considered chronic pain. So it's a pain that's never going away, but it could also be a dull type of feeling. It could be a sharp type of feeling. It can progress. I know when I was going through the avascular necrosis death of my hip joints, I've become very more sensitive to a storm. So like I know when a storm is coming, I can feel it. I was like, oh, now I know what my grandma means when she says the storm is coming. But it's something that is lasting a very long time. I've also found that water therapy in a heated pool, y'all, not a freezing cold pool, has also helped with that chronic pain. I'm just doing research on building up your muscles. So I hope that explains it. Sometimes chronic pain cannot be treated with opioids or any type of medication.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the difficult things about dealing with chronic pain is it's just there forever and there's not a whole lot you can throw at the pain, so you have to figure out different ways to work through that pain, which it takes a lot of time to be able to distinguish that chronic pain versus that crisis acute pain. So I would recommend pain journals just until you learn what is the acute and what is the chronic. But the chronic pain can be just as excruciating or more excruciating than a sickle cell pain crisis.
Mm-hmm.
The death of my bone was the most excruciating
Wow.
pain I've ever experienced. It doesn't even top a pain crisis, in my opinion.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Tanika. And a few more questions have come in the chat. We can come back to acute and chronic pain, but bringing us back really to the topic of trauma, a specific question came in about grief. So Noah had touched on losing warriors, and so the comment that came in is pushing through the grief and keep going. And so I want to tie that in as well, because grief and trauma can really be interrelated. So Noah, can you respond
Mm-hmm.
to that one? And then again, others can chime in as well.
Yes, thank you. I really want to applaud everything that Scott and Tanika have already said about self-care and journaling and listening to your body. I think grief is one of those things traditionally, at least in my family, we we keep it in, we bottle it in, we don't talk about it, we don't share it. Similar to secrets and issues and deep deeply sensitive topics like depression and bipolar and pain, like what we're talking about right now. I think grief for me has been an exercise in breath work, right? And awareness. I want to just highlight what Tanika said in terms of pain journaling. For me, that is writing down when I'm feeling pain in my body, where it is, what the severity is, writing about how I feel about it. I wrote a book, self-published a book called Bookmarks of the Sickle Cell Warrior, and that's how that book came about. It was me taking a mirror to myself on paper and saying, "This is what's going on internally." And so, for me, grief, I know we all experience it, But for me, grief at an early age caused more pain. And so I lost my several family members, but one of my key influential family members, my father figure, I lost him in my freshman year of college, and it was hard. It was a scary moment. He got lung cancer, and again, I was a freshman in college. I was at the peak of my best body in my head as you know, as they say. And literally, when it happened, I had back to back crises, lots of pain, a lot of heaviness in my body, went into a depression. Um, in addition to and what Tanika said when she said I could feel a storm coming, that being an empath and sensitive to others and suffering around me, it was hard trying to stand and be strong for my mom and my cousins and my people while still being very broken inside. And pain for us as warriors, it's so normal for us that we just kind of flip into survivor mode if we can get there and try to find ways to just cope. But you have to take the time to sit, to center yourself, to breathe, to have someone to speak to honestly about these things. Otherwise, it just continues to sit on you like a weight, like an elephant. Like an elephant just sitting on you when you sleep. You know, like that pressure. And when you give voice to the grief, when you give voice to the depression, to the issue, to the pain, you start to work on your muscles and your strength. Like Tanika's talking a lot about physical well-being, wellness, working out. You know, I do a lot of yoga and stretching and interval exercise. But as much as you have to do the physical things, you also have to do the mental and the spiritual and the emotional things, right? And so, in order to empower yourself to get through the grief, you got to do the work while you're in it, as hard as it may be. That means to not be afraid to cry. That means to not be afraid to feel that emotion. That means to not um, block yourself from saying, hey, I don't feel good today, you know, and then the next steps. I feel like when you start to develop a discipline in how you um, meditate and how you make yourself aware of your self-care and what you need to do internally, it becomes easier to get through the mountains and the valleys and through grief that is inevitable. I know a lot of you have seen people lose their lives to COVID. I thought I was going to die when I got COVID and Omicron because the people in the hospital didn't know what to do about it. They was like, sir, good luck, you know? And so, and two, I know you all have heard, at least from me in my hematology journey, they told me I wouldn't live past a certain age. When I checked that age off, I'm like, okay, they lied. Or they just, they didn't know what they was talking about. And the medication and all of the things, right? And so that it was mind-boggling. It was it was a shock, right? Like checkpointing those, oh, I made it to 21, I made it to 25, I made it to 30. So demystify the structures and the outline and the grid that they say, oh, you can and cannot do, or you may live, you know, or you may not live. Because what it did to me was I lived radically because I felt like my life would end soon. And there's a grief in that. There's a grief, a real grief in that. That's like, yeah, you know, should I live through fear or should I live like, you know? So I'll put that on the table because you know I'm having some pain in my back now, but I feel like Camille, you have a little bit more you could say about that too. I saw you nodding. Um, what do you think?
Yeah, I think as far as yeah, the whole age thing, like I said, earlier, I did a lot as a kid. I was in basketball, I was in tennis, I played in the band, and that probably messed up my hip even more. And I was denied my hip replacement surgery because I was told I was too young to have it, even though the bone had, completely disintegrated. Um, they put a picture there and said, "Oh well, you're not 60, like you're 15, we can't do this surgery." But I I did too much because in my mind, after being told that, or at least my parents being told, "Oh, you know, let her do what she want," but because she may not live to be 12, she may not live to be 18, so I wanted to do everything all at once, and I think in a way that kind of, being 41, yes, I'm a happy 41, because I honestly didn't expect to make it to 41, with everything going on. But the doing everything made me feel like I said, like I was normal. It made me live life. There was times where when I was in high school, and I would get sick, and this would be during like football season or competition season in band, and I didn't want to miss a football game. I didn't want to miss a tournament. I would be in the hospital. I would get sick, get admitted, and I would sneak out of the hospital just to go to a football game or a tournament. And I would be gone all day. I knew how to, disconnect myself from my IV. I knew how to, stop the machine, and start the machine. So I would leave, like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, tell them I was going on a walk with my father or my sister. And I would be gone all day. And I would come back at like 8 p.m., to all of Fontana police looking for me at the hospital, and around surrounding areas. But it made me not only I was able to stay in school, but I I had fun. That was what made me happy, was, being able to play, music at a football game or a tournament, win competitions, and be like my fellow, bandmates, So the pain and, as far as like what, Noah was saying on grief, I've lost several friends from sickle cell. My best friend, died about, I want to say like 7 years ago. And we were thick as thieves. We went to sickle cell camp together. We did everything together. She was literally like a blood sister. And when I was, like I said, I'm a traveler, I knew she was not doing well, but my father got me a ticket to go see family in New York. And I flew to New York, and just as I landed, my father called me and told me that she had passed away. And I was ready to come back, and my father would not let me come back, to go to her funeral, because he knew that, I would break down and end up in another crisis, end up back in the hospital, and I had just gotten out of the hospital, he was trying to make me, have a good time, and like, and live life, but it broke me when I came back. Like I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to talk to anybody, because we were supposed to, have kids together. We were supposed to graduate, school together, graduate college together. We were supposed to get married together, and losing her, it was like losing a family member, and I'm still struggling, with her loss. Recently I lost another, friend. We were actually both in the hospital at the same exact time. We hadn't seen each other in several years, and planned to, meet up as soon as I was discharged. And as soon as I got home, something just told me to check my social media. And when I went on his page, all I see is RIP, RIP. And I couldn't believe it, because I was like, what? Like this, this can't be right, and not seeing him, not having, being able to see him, you know, before it happened, whatever happened, you know, uh, it was hard, and I think a lot of times, like, yes, we're on these social media, and we're in these support groups, and we talk to a lot of other sickle cell warriors. But when someone passes away, I think a lot of people, I know it's not just me, but a lot of us are like, well, what happened? How did they die? Because you don't believe that it was just a crisis. No, it wasn't just a crisis. And it kind of scares you. It kind of keeps you from, like, uh, not wanting to, I guess, go to the doctor and rely on them sometimes, because the stories we see, a lot of people, you see a lot of complaints, doctors don't listen to us. And you start to wonder, well, is it because, that particular sickle cell patient didn't, wasn't heard, they didn't listen, and now they're no longer here, and that in itself scares me a lot, because it's like, I want to know what happened, not to be rude to the family or to that patient per se, but I want to know, because I want to know, like, is there something that I can do, for myself, to prevent it from happening. I plan to be 120, just so, everybody know, that's my goal. I had an uncle who lived to be 105,
Wow.
and didn't have a wrinkle on him, had the mind of, of a 10-year-old who remembers everything, I plan to live that long. That's my goal. So I need to know everything. You're gonna tell me everything that's going on and how I can fix it, But grief is just, it's hard when it's somebody you know.
Mhm.
It's hard when it's somebody you don't know. Is in both cases, it's just it's different, but in the end, you do have people that support you and that you can talk to. And if you need to talk to somebody, don't think that you're crazy. You're not crazy because you have a therapist or a psychiatrist. You're not crazy. You just, sometimes, family is not that person you need to talk to.
Right.
Best friend. And I know that, wholeheartedly, because there's some things, medically that, my best friend is my father. And there's some times where I don't want to talk to him about it.
Yeah.
Because he has a very different opinion than I do, but yeah, talk about it, because it does help. Write about it. That helps, all of that helps. Um, and yeah, you learn how to cope.
Yeah.
You
Well,
definitely learn how to cope.
thank you so much, Camille. And you brought up another aspect of all of this, which is being scared. That these things that come up are really scary. So, Scott, I wanted you to weigh in as well, if you would like, about the question about grief, and then we will continue on.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. First off, my condolences, Noah, Camille, on your loss. I lost a sister to breast cancer. Even though it's not sickle cell, being us as people having a chronic condition, we can kind of definitely sympathize with that, because you know our place on this earth, we don't know how much time we have. We definitely, Camille, I definitely want to be 105, still walking, still talking. So, of course, we got to preserve our organs as much as possible. But, let me know if this sounds familiar. I, you're in the hospital, and you're looking up in the ceiling, you're on the hospital bed, hooked up to all these IVs, and then you're having a conversation with your higher power, whatever the higher power is. And of course, when I was younger, I indulged in alcoholic beverages or smoked a little marijuana here and there. And you're looking up and you're talking to your higher beings like, yep, God, or whoever your higher being is, you know, if I make it out of here, and you're feeling terrible, and if I make it out of here, I'll never drink again, I'll never do this again, and you're contemplating what put you here in this. Sometimes it's your own doing that puts you in a hospital. So it's okay to in those moments to realize, like, you're not weak, you're just grieving at that point. You're talking to yourself that, I'm gonna live a better life. You're doing these certain things moving forward, but at the same time, it's like, you know, it's okay to just cry in the hospital bed. It's okay when especially, like, when you're alone and the lights are dark. You're going through these emotions, and it's okay to express yourself that way. It's okay to just sit there, tell your therapist how you're feeling, and go through these waves of emotions. Um, I did have I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. And one of my prophytes, which is prophyte means, one of your big brothers in the organization, he had sickle cell as well. And, we connected through having the same illness. And he used to give me, tips and advice. And I think it was 3 years ago, he passed away. And that hit me hard, because one, we're in the same organization. Two, we're in the same chapter. And you just never know. He was doing so well, and out of nowhere, he just passed away. And it's funny enough that encouraged all his other, line brothers, or fraternity brothers that was close to him, to reach out to me and saying, hey, how you doing, yeah, how you feeling, this, that, and the third. And it kind of put sickle cell in a different light to them. That, I know they lost somebody that has sickle cell, and I'm the closest person that they know that have sickle cells as well. And I try to give them, words of comfort, like, hey, I definitely appreciate you checking up on me, but how are you feeling, how are you doing, and stuff like that. Just I felt like I was a therapist at that point, and helping them grieve and move on from that situation. So grieving is a funny thing, so you never know when it's going to hit you. It can come out of nowhere. I was scrolling through social media one time, and there's a sickle cell warrior that I know. She had a heart surgery, and she documented her whole journey. And when I tell you, like, that made me so emotional, and I like, something just compelled me just to send her a message, like, that was so inspiring. You know, uh, I hope you just stay healthy and stuff like that, and just certain situations that people go through. You know, it makes you just be appreciative of the life that you have, but at the same time, sympathize with other people, what they're going through. So just embrace grief. That's all I have to say on it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Scott. And welcome back, Tanika. Sounds like you would like to respond as well.
Yeah, can we also just talk about anger? Um, it's okay to be angry. One of the things that I had to teach myself is, in those frustrating situations in the ED, or dealing with a hospitalist coming in, seeing the plans in the chart that your hematologist put and decide to throw it out the window, not to let your anger culminate and build up while you're in crisis. Because I realized the more angry that I got, the more intensity of pain, which means that it'll prolong your stay. And it's knowing when to control your anger. get better as soon as possible. Go through all the channels to report that, particular medical person. Be brave enough to fire them, and deal with your anger when you're at home through follow-ups, because so many times I have gotten angry and I just raised my blood pressure, my crisis pain intensified, it moved to a different, region of my body. It's always okay to be angry, but I think us warriors need to be a little bit more strategic about showing our anger when we are already in a vulnerable situation, because it impacts your body, your soul, and your mind. Now, I'm saying it's okay once you get home, but just don't ever put yourself in a situation where you allow your anger with the system that we have been placed in forces you to stay longer.
Can I open that up a little bit more, Tanika? I just want to say what that looks like is make sure your mom was on the phone. Make sure your advocate is on the phone when our doctor is in the room. Make sure that our doctor knows, okay, I don't feel comfortable speaking to you by yourself. Please bring in a social worker and or a manager every time you speak to me, because you are causing me to be uncomfortable. And when I'm uncomfortable, I don't feel safe. And when I'm not safe, I'm not going to feel well. I love that you said that, Tanika.
Or record it. Every
Report it.
phone has a recorder, and because sometimes a doctor will tell you one thing while your family member is there, and then when you're there alone with them, they're going to tell you something different. Like, you have to record it, you have to write it down, have another nurse that you trust in the room, because I've had many times where I had someone blatantly lie on me, and I used to lash out a lot, to the point where I was hearing people that said they didn't want me as a patient, and I had to learn how to calm that down, and either talk to my family, or learn how to talk to them in a different way, because when you lash out, that's when they come at you with, oh, well, she can go off like this, she's not in pain, she doesn't need this medication, she doesn't, and then you're stuck, then you're dealing with even more severe pain, because now the doctors think that, oh, you have this smart addict, who think they know everything, and and can treat themselves. Let's go ahead and send them home. She could do that at home. She's not going to do that here. I'm the doctor. So definitely record it, or have, like Noah said, have a family member there at all times. Have, an advocate there, at all times, because you never know. Every hospital is different. Every hospital is different, and I've learned that the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you gotta come prepared. You may be in pain, but your mental status have to be on point, because there's sometimes where you're in so much pain, you tend to not do things that you would normally do.
Mm-hmm.
You're not writing it down, you're not, you're not thinking the same, so you definitely have to be prepared at all times.
Yeah.
Truly, it's a lot to ask for someone in pain to not just be aware and present and articulate, but to have some emotional empathy for the doctor. It's so many times I've heard my mom and so many people say, "Control yourself, Noah. Watch how you say, watch your tone." And I'm just like, when is somebody going to care enough to know that at the end of the day, I'm still in pain? Like, why is the pressure on me to
Yeah,
monitor?
that's
You
a
know?
tough one. And Tanika did comment on being strategic, to
Hmm.
accept the feeling, but then manage it a different kind of way. I think Scott was going to
Mhm.
weigh in on this one as well.
Yeah, I may or may not have, I may or may have not had some choice words with a few providers, uh, but it's interesting. You definitely, sometimes these providers, they have to know how you really feel, and that's okay. But I want to wake it up a little bit, and there's been times where that can kind of spill over to your loved ones. So I do have a question, like it's been times where my wife came to me and she's asking me a question, and I'm so like angry at the moment. I don't hear anything. I don't, I'm just so blinded by anger that sometimes I'm hurting her in the process with my anger.
Mm.
How do you guys control that? How do you guys balance that?
I think it's a struggle for all of us, but one of the things that we have to recognize is putting our perspective and our feet in our caregiver shoes, because yes, they take care of us, but what I found with working with a lot of caregivers is they see sickle cell like pain and the disease, but they don't fully comprehend unless it's a parent that like goes in deep dive, to really understand. Because like I remember being, like a teenager and being exhausted, and my mom's like, you need to do these chores, but she didn't understand that I was exhausted, and then I would lash out on her, or being in pain, because I think even our parents at times don't, or loved ones or lovers at times doesn't understand that we're basically in pain every single day, and we ourselves are trying to learn and navigate what that looks like day to day, depending on what the event is or if you have to go to work. I call my sickle cell her. And one of the things that she does is, better believe it's a birthday party, I'm going in crisis. We about to go on a cruise last year, COVID in a crisis. Like, I
That
think,
is so true. That is so true.
Minor
I've dealt with
wrong.
that too. Yes, so I noticed that, like whenever like something big was coming up, like you're looking forward to it. I would
mm-hmm,
go into a crisis day of, day before, and they can't lose. And I had to literally tell myself at a young age that, when I knew about these things, I can't think about it. I got to forget about it altogether
Mm.
in order to make it to the day,
right.
because it happened so many times, whether it was, at a young age, my 20s, going to the club, going to a party, going to, even, Christmas or Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
or, like I had to literally tell myself that, that it wasn't happening.
Mm-hmm,
There's nothing coming up. Until that day came, I'm going all out. Yes,
mm-hmm,
and there was even times like I remember, my family is so big, so when we had family, dinners, Christmas, Thanksgiving, when the cousins would get around, it was just, we wanted to be there all night, because everybody's cracking jokes. And there was times where I would just laughing so hard, you send yourself into a crisis. Like, who does that? Like you had so much fun, just cracking jokes and laughing with your family members that, and everybody knew it. My family knew it, and they would always, take me to the side, Camila, we see you, getting overly excited, and I'm like, you know what? I don't even care.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like when I was younger, back to, my 20s, when I would go out, when I would go to the club or whatever, better believe I always had a change of clothes in my car, because I knew that as soon as I left that club, I wasn't driving home. I was driving straight to the ER. And sometimes I just didn't care.
Yeah.
Like there was sometimes I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna have fun, and I'll pay the consequences later. You know
Yeah.
what I
You
mean?
want to live your
But
life.
you
Right.
wanted to live life, yeah. You wanted to live life, but yeah, there's, you just, you have to think about it ahead of time sometimes, to
Right.
make it happen.
Can I
Um,
circle back to his question too?
yes.
I would just want to share just one couple of things.
Okay.
Um, Listen to your caregiver, your lover, your parent, and then also exchange. Give them some clarification, some understanding. Let them ask questions of as to um, why you're so passionate, or why that tone may be a little heavier or louder than the previous tone, and what sensitivities. Give them a understanding as to what your triggers are, and I think that way, moving forward, they'll know how to navigate when you are not feeling your best.
Mm.
And I actually just had an idea when Noah was speaking. Maybe you can come up with like a word system. So like when you're in pain and you say, I don't know,
A
crises,
signal, yeah, a
or so
signal.
that your spouse know, okay, he's in pain. Or if you're getting angry, you could be like, mood, because I know when I'm in pain, I don't want to say a full sentence, but if you know beforehand, maybe come up with like 3 to 5 words that's dealing with whatever it is you're dealing with in your mental state, your body, or a crisis, that you can just say, and then she knows, okay, something's up, I need to give him space. Or maybe I need to sit next to him and hold his hand when he's going through whatever he's going
Mm-hmm.
through. That might cut some of the tension, because it's words that you two came up together, and then it's justification, and then you just continue to use it. And that way she knows you're not pushing her off because you're trying to be mean, but you might be dehydrated and going into a crisis.
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
really answers a question in the chat as well. The person was a bit worried about stressing out their loved one, and I think this is great. So you talk together with your loved one at throughout the course of your daily life and at different points in time, and then when you are not feeling your best and you're worn down mentally or in pain, then you can not have to worry that you're stressing them out. That's one more thing that would be on you. And so yeah, I think that's a really good point there. I wanted to bring us back to a couple of things that we talked about earlier, and we have about half an hour left. So again, that's the topic here is the trauma of pain, but each of you really touched on the trauma of getting care in our healthcare system. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about uh, specific coping strategies that you use. You've all brought up excellent coping strategies along the way, but just deal and have talked about advocacy and so on when you're dealing with the trauma of actually having to seek care. And the second part of that I wanted to ask you about is transition. So each of you talked about how challenging it has been or is. And so how can you all as young adults actually help young people with sickle cell disease in both of these ways? So again, dealing with the healthcare system, dealing with the trauma of pain and the mental health effects. And so, yeah, what is some advice that you can give young people, or what can you do to support young people?
I want to go in real quick because it's off the tip of my tongue. As somebody in theater and as a creative, as an artist, perception is so important. You all know this. Even they teach us this as Black people. How we are perceived is important. But sometimes when you're in pain, when it comes to healthcare, you don't really feel like code switching or changing your authentic self to accommodate and or work with the healthcare team. But there's a lesson there, and there is an important nugget of wisdom in that. Like it's not that you have to change or alter who you are as a person, but um, you have to see the other possibilities and perspectives as it relates to the person and the staff that you're working with. For example, one doctor was purposely. Um, let me rewrite that. I had a doctor who was pissing me off on purpose, like just asking questions that you shouldn't just ask a warrior, like when were you diagnosed with sickle cell, or or uh, have you ever taken this medication before, you know, or simple questions to you, right? And long story short, she in my frustration, I banged the table, flipped the table, and do you know this lady took off running and said that I threatened her life because of an emotional outburst, right? So while I had no desire to harm her, the lesson in it for me was, Noah, your emotions alone are so powerful and so loud and resonates especially when you're in pain, that it may rattle a few people. So a strategy in that is to write how you really feel, how something makes you really feel, but then find someone else, an advocate, um, a support group, a doctor, a friend who could articulate what it is that you feel like is not being heard. Do y'all relate to that? Y'all have moments like that in the hospital where the doctor was like, "Okay, I'm scared of you."
Yeah, they always have doctors that say like, when, what, how long you had sickle cell, so it's like these simple questions, but uh, sometimes, they're just probably, I look at it as they're doing their job, but some things that I do to cope is, I draw. I like to draw. So, having some sort of like outlet, like Noah mentioned, like writing or drawing, or maybe reading a book, or maybe watching your favorite television show, watching sports. These are certain things that you can kind of do to like help you cope. Also, I talk to my therapist as well, and we work on certain coping mechanisms. Sometimes you just taking a simple deep breath, deep breaths can help release some of the things that you're dealing with. So there's so many coping mechanisms out there that you can kind of do. You just got to figure out really what works for you. And as far as helping the younger warrior generations come up, for me, uh, being a content creator, starting a YouTube page, sharing your story can definitely help, because you're letting the young warriors know that they're not alone. The things that you're going through, we've already been through. So just finding an outlet to, you know, tell your story and let them know that, this is how you can kind of manage through, your crisis or your sickle cell, and just know that you're not alone, and there's a community out here for you, and we're rooting for you to achieve the same things that we achieved as well. So I think that's pretty much what I have so far. Tanika, if you want to share.
Yeah, I was going to take it from a different angle, the perspective of moving away from home as a young adult going into university. Uh, I would say when you're deciding on what university that you choose, that it's near a sickle cell comprehensive center. Make sure when you go to university, you're registered with the disability office. Even before you step foot on campus, come up with a visit with your family to meet with the hematology team of that prospective hospital that you'll go to when you're in university. But make sure that they're also connected and feeded in with your your pediatric hospital. I would also, which I didn't do first semester, don't go crazy with the credits. Like, just take the bare minimum credits for the first semester just so you can get acclimated to your location. Also, if you feel comfortable, just let your professor know, like, hey, I am registered with the disability office. I do have sickle cell disease. Sometimes I might, miss class. Tell them upfront, what can I do in those situations? Also, make sure your dean knows. Make sure whoever your RA is know. All of the people that will touch you on the day-to-day basis. And I know it's a lot, but do the due diligence, because I had my first crises away when I was, I think, a sophomore in undergrad, and like my RA and them didn't know, so it made the progress a little bit longer to get to the hospital versus if I would have let them know and explain. Even with my professors, it saved me because I was registered with disability. So I was like, okay, I believe her, type thing. So just, do your due diligence when
Mm-hmm.
you're, looking for a university. Maybe consider, universities in more, city, type places versus rural. Just because that, city, hospital would know a little bit more about sickle cell because the population is more, progressive and more diverse than maybe a rural or a suburban. And then also understand the difference between like community hospitals versus
Mm-hmm.
university institutions, where your community hospitals, their purpose is just to keep the community healthy and afloat. most of those hospitals are not going to have a huge sickle cell program versus like your university hospitals. So that's also important when you're, doing your college search, to make sure at minimum you're near a university hospital versus a community hospital who can just patch you up, and if something serious happens, that means you're going to have to find an institution to transfer you, and that's going to be more time, more money, time lost. So just be considerate of where you're going when you're looking for universities.
I want to drop another thing in there. Bring your pain plan. If you don't have a pain plan, have a copy of it, share it, find a way to connect your home doctor to wherever you are. Because truth of the matter is, hospital care in Houston, Texas is different from hospital care in San Francisco. They are on two different time zones. They have two different sets of resources, rules, and laws and regulations. They may not even see your type of medication where they are. So that's really important. You could be on 1 milligram and they can say, we don't even give you 0.2 here, so that's so important
Yeah.
that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and then also protect your medication when you move into the dorm rooms. No one should know that you're on any type of narcotics, anything. Like none of my friends knew that I was taking these type of medicines. And the ones that I did share with, it was like senior year and I was really, really close. So just guard your medication, keep it in a locked box, and just make sure, I know it sounds tedious, but count your pills, because people do steal. You're on a college campus, so just be very, very careful with your medication in your dorm room. It's a difference when you have an apartment, but a lot of dorm rooms, especially freshman year, the showers are all females are in the shower. So take your medication like in a safe space in your dorm, and just don't articulate or blast that out to anyone.
Yeah, that's great practical advice. And then in the chat, I wanted to call out both Noah and Camille are talking about back to the hospital setting. For Noah, bringing familiar things can actually have the staff see you as a person who has a life outside of being a person not feeling well in the hospital. And then Camille also points out that bringing those kinds of things in can help you feel that comfort of not being in an unknown place. So I would, I think that's a really important idea as well. And then Stephanie it's come up several times throughout our time today about faith and spirituality and religion. And so Stephanie's bringing that up again. So we're getting a little bit low on time. So I wanted to bring something back that came up at the beginning. So all of you, well, some of you talked about what sickle cell has done in relationships at times to your confidence, and that you've been comparing at times yourself to other people and your own goals and aspirations. I wanted to ask you, some sickle cell warriors might feel that what you all are talking about is beyond them. You all are very successful and doing so well. What can you say to people to know that all this really is attainable, that what you all have done is something that others can attain?
Camille, you want to go first?
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay. Here's the thing that I don't like about comparison is that it's like a fog. Like you don't really see the reality of what the other person has done or gone through to get to where they are today. So it does you a disservice and it dishonors yourself and it dishonors the love that you have for yourself. So I would say find ways to love yourself, um, and love everything that you come with. So many times I have, and again, this is not easy, this is difficult. I know I've spoken to many of my mentees that said, I hate having sickle cell. I just wish I didn't have it. I want to live like I don't have it. And all of this does is creates a web of complications that makes it harder for you as you develop into an adult. You gotta embrace what you were born with. You got to, because you can't change. Just like they say, you can't change your parents, the history, the trauma that came before you. In order for you to deal with how you navigate the future, you gotta honor it, protect it, incubate it in a space that that doesn't war against your soul, right? Comparison to me says, um, I'm lesser than, right? But here's the thing: there's a competitive, there's a healthy comparison, and there's a healthy um, component to that that says, all right, this person is showing me based off of the steps that they've taken, I can get there. I can, so many times I've heard opportunities, um, at least for me personally, opportunities have passed me by because I don't have this degree or this certification or this, you know. Um, but that shouldn't um, cause you to not start and to not aspire towards.
Right.
So see it as motivation, see it
Right.
as a way to honor, love yourself, and set yourself up for success, because those same people will tell you, hey, here are some resources. Let's help you get there, right? Tap in. Kind Wellness has therapy sessions. I know for the pull up, we do monthly, every Saturday, monthly social gatherings virtually. So you could be near or far. You want to get connected with your community so that they can show you the possibilities, because you could do it. You could do
Yeah.
it. That's
Oh,
what I would say.
thank you. And Camille, you were going to comment on that?
Yeah, so I think I had said a lot earlier about comparison that, throughout life, I used to compare myself to a lot of family members, but I also did not bring into account that these are people who aren't going through what I go through, on the day-to-day struggle. They haven't spent, hundreds and hundreds of days in the hospital, and they're not taking, these heavy narcotics, on the regular, and so I had to definitely, start telling myself, be happy in who you are, because, they live a normal life, they're perfectly healthy. You're wanting to accomplish all of this, all these goals, but you have sickle cell as that brick wall that you have to break down first before you can actually get to that goal. I had, and I'm not gonna lie, it was friends and family members who, used to tell me, oh, just, live life, live life. What do you mean just live life? Just have fun. And for me, living life was me actually getting my nursing degree, going back to school, actually meeting people, because I was a wallflower in my house, while everybody else worked and went to school, I was at home every day. It took me years. I'm 41, and it took me almost 20 years to decide that I was going to go back to school, because I wanted to, and I knew that I could do it, and not, and had to not listen to everybody else in my ear telling me, why are you going to put yourself through that? Just have fun. You have family that love you, and you have friends that love you. And it was like, okay, that's not enough for me. Like, I want to be working too, because I can. I want to be able to make my own way. I don't want to live at home forever. uh, so yeah, you can't, you had to, sometime, and hopefully at a young age, and I would definitely tell the younger generation, not to do what I did, by constantly comparing myself, to friends and family who, have kids and are married and, graduated university, and, uh, because I could do it too. It's just in due time. It's going to be my time, and 20 years ago wasn't my time, but eventually, I did make it through school. I just got up one day and was like, you know what, I'm going to go sign up for school. And, and I was so proud of myself, because I made it through school, perfect attendance, and straight A's and a 4.0.
Wonderful.
And I never did that, because high school altogether, believe it or not, I was actually given a trophy on my senior year for being the person in the history of my school to miss the most days of school. I missed 2 years. Yes, yes. And I was proud too. I
Come
missed
on.
I missed 2 full
Come
years
on.
of high school, of 4 years of high school.
Wow.
They not
And
like us.
when we a pep rally, yes, for sure. That song should have came out then, because I would have been, raving and ranting, y'all not like me, but so making it, perfect attendance and straight A's and a 4.0, man, I couldn't be happier, and I was, I was dusting my shoulders off,
Yes.
in front of everybody and showing it out, when the time came, and I plan on doing it again
Well
once,
deserved.
I deal with, the complications right now that I'm dealing with, so
Excellent.
yeah, definitely.
All right. Scott, did you have any comments about how do people attain, success and the person who they want to be, what they aspire to?
Yeah, definitely just you are your own competition, just like Dr. Ravi is saying, like
Mhm.
your only competition is yourself. You don't have to worry about what are you doing right, what are you doing wrong. Your story is your story. Just like Noah said, just gravitate towards somebody that you can have a healthy competition with.
Mm.
That person for me is my twin brother.
Mhm.
Funny enough, when we both graduated high school, I had scholarships. He's like, oh yeah, you got scholarships? I'm gonna get some scholarships. So he got scholarships, right? So then my freshman year, I had a car. And then he's like, oh, you got a car? I'm gonna get a car. Then he joined Phi Beta Sigma first, right? His sophomore year. And he's like, and I said, oh, you joining Phi Beta Sigma? I'm about to join Phi Beta Sigma next. So it's like that healthy competition that we help each other, grow and
Yes.
become the people we are today. He's an engineer as well, but he
Mhm.
does cybersecurity. So it's just certain things that you can do that can be healthy and proactive to what you want to do. Um, you know, but sometimes, you do have to recognize that when you do have a sickle cell crisis, it does tend to creep in your head, and sometimes you tend to ask why. And when you ask why, that's when you tend to compare. And when
Mm.
you compare, that's when you keep, you fall into this rabbit hole of depression and not knowing your worth. Now, I definitely don't like to brag. I definitely try to keep a humble streak, a humble personality, because that's how I consider myself to be very humble. I don't really like to talk too much about myself. I just like to have the work show for itself.
Mm.
But sometimes it's okay to realize, to look in the mirror, you are him, you are her, and talk
Mhm.
your ish.
Yeah.
That's what I really got to say.
Yes,
Celebrate your wins.
yes.
Yeah, I think of comparison as stifling and stilling your soul, because you're wasting too much time thinking of what could have been instead of actually being what you're meant to be. And all it takes is one step, just one step. And look for supporters along the way, whether it's your family or your friends or in your community or teachers or your professor, your therapist. Just look for people to support you. I had so many people tell me, oh, you're crazy. You're not going to open up a coffee shop in Thailand. You're not going to live abroad. You're not going to do this. And I did everything that I said I was going to do. So just keep the negative thoughts out of your ear. You have a different perspective. People with disabilities have superpowers, I truly believe, that normal people don't have, and use that unique superpower to get to where you need to be. And I think a part of that superpower is grit and tenacity, and being able to fight longer than the average person, even being gifted mind, just because of the deficiencies that's happening in your body. So use your intelligence to propel you into whatever you want to do. The only thing that is stopping you is you. You just have to take the first step to whatever your dream is.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. And we are really winding down now. So I think that Dr. Raleigh will come back in. And again, just love everything that you guys have brought to us in terms of specific coping strategies, philosophies that have helped you manage through your lives to attain so much. And really thinking about it, that you all have shared your superpowers with us, and we would ask others in the audience to think about what their superpowers are and how they can share those with the world. So I think that Dr. Raleigh's coming on, and I want to thank you all so much. You're on mute.
I was saying, you guys had me cheerleading, saying amen, hallelujah, all of that. Oh my goodness. You guys are the dream team of having, no, this was a very robust conversation. And I think that each and every one of you reached so many different folks out there. Um, seriously, I want to applaud you, and I really need for you to hear me, because there are people, you all, who are isolated.
Mhm.
There are people who are lonely. There are people who are not connected. There are people who they don't know if they could do it because they spend so much time in the hospital. And I need for you all to realize that you were selected. I'm so glad that you all were able to show up, because it means so much for someone to hear saying, maybe I can.
Mhm.
For saying, you know what, they look just like me. I'm being honest with you. I don't know how, and I get touched. I don't know how powerful you guys think that your words are and were, but they are. And I know for a fact that someone, they always do, they reach out to us, and maybe this is their time that they're ready for mental health. And so let me just say this to everyone. Yes, this is just for California, but we do have no cost mental health for you, and if you're a warrior, and your family members. If you are a warrior in California and you want to speak with somebody, it's no cost. And these folks have been vetted by us, so they know about sickle cell disease, and they look like you all. And I'm saying maybe this is the time that you're saying, gosh, I need to probably talk with somebody because I'm feeling so much, and or I'm feeling isolated. Camille, what you said, you've been a wallflower in like 20 years, you finally broke out. That's wonderful. Maybe somebody just like you at age 30, 35 will say, maybe it's time. So seriously, hear me. Tanika, thank you. Noah and Scott, Camille, it means a lot to me that you all showed up, but not just to me, to the community, because there was somebody who was feeling sad or lonely, not connected, and now perhaps they will reach out and touch. So thank you. Dr. Marcia Treadwell, as always, excellent. We know that your schedule is so tight. So spending time with this on this Saturday for 2 hours means a lot to us. And we're very thankful. We are at that time, everyone. I'm not sure if there are any final questions that came up. I know I put some quotes in there about comparison, and there isn't a such thing as a comparison. According to Dr. Wanda Witten Sherney, we're like snowflakes, so you can't even compare, which means that this is your life. What are you going to do with it? And you have today is a day that you can make it different than what it was yesterday, if you want to. And if today is a day that you just rest, guess what? You just rest today. And then let's see what tomorrow brings, because sometimes that's what it takes. It's just to be able to rest. Um, all right, thank you. So I am going to allow each of you, including Dr. Marcia, to have some final words to our audience, just to let everyone know these are all recorded. And so there will be an opportunity if you happen to miss it, or you're like, ooh, my goodness, you guys missed something wonderful. You can invite someone to go to the website and they will be able, and we also do it through e-newsletter as well. they'll be able to see this. So let me start with Camille. Final words of just today. The topic was trauma and pain, but of course, it included a holistic montage of many things. Final words that you want to be able to share, followed by Tanika, then Scott, then Noah, and then Dr. Marcia. Camille?
Yeah, I would just say, you have to just live life to the fullest. Don't uh don't hide behind anything. Don't think you can't do, what, people who aren't sick, can do, because uh I think you can do anything you put your mind to. Any one of us, and I believe that wholeheartedly. As long as you follow through with what you want to do as far as your goals, uh and write it down. Sometimes it helps to write it down, because if you see it, I have a sister who everything she believes in and everything she wants to do, she writes it down, she puts it on a sticky note, and she has it on her mirror in her bathroom, and she always, and she told her kids does it too, and it helps, so yeah, definitely live life to the fullest. uh Talk to somebody if you need to. Write it down. Write how you're feeling. Write it down, or record it. There's a lot of us, I've been told many times, oh, I need to write a book, and I need to stop procrastinating, but um I do, it's thanks to Dr. Rowley that made me really get out and start talking about, my journey with sickle cell, and I thank you, Dr. Rowley, for that. Uh, uh, um, because it helped me in so many ways. So yeah, that's definitely what I would say to other sickle cell warriors. And thank you for having me.
Of course, Tanika.
Yeah, I would say it's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes is a part of life. Um, what deters life from being flourishing is you not taking the step to just do it. So, no matter how big or how small, whatever your dreams is, just go through it. Also, just be mindful of your body, be mindful of your surroundings. Also, be mindful of your emotional triggers, especially when you're in hospital settings. You can get really angry because of the situation you might be in and ball it up and it explodes like a volcano. But just, try your best to breathe, calm yourself, take care of your body, whether it's just going for a walk for 30 minutes. That improves overall health. Use your body to work out, find things that make you happy. Be mindful that sickle cell disease is kind of like a roller coaster. One minute you're doing well and you're high, and then you're down and your mood falls with it. So just be mindful of where you're at in that process, and communicate with your family when you're feeling well. Create conversations or either systems that will make it a little less stressful when you're in crises, so that your family knows, okay, we need to take you to the hospital, or she just needs some quiet time, or maybe, I can cook dinner for him because he's starting to feel tired. So just communicate with your family. Make sure you're plugged into good care. I know sometimes it's difficult in the United States with the shortage of hematologists, but try your best to find a good hematologist or a program that will value you for who you are, and then be a part of the community. Tell your story, shine bright, and be the best that you can be. And thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, just want to let all the warriors know, you can do whatever you put your mind to. Take care of yourself. Watch what you consume, watch what you eat, preserve your organs. You have a whole life to live out there, and just know that somebody out there wants to hear your story. Um, and with that being said, shameless plug. If you guys want to, follow me on social medias at Help with Scotty on all social medias, Instagram, TikTok, all that good nature. And I do draw as well. If you wanna check out my artwork as Scotty the artist. So thank you for your time. Thank you, Kind Wellness. Thank you, Dr. Riley. Thank you, Marsha, and everyone on the panel. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you. And Noah?
Everyone deserves a full life, free from mistreatment. And I'll leave it with that. Thank you, Dr. Riley. Thank you, Dr. Treadwell. Anytime, I am here for you.
We know that. Thank you so much. And then Dr. Marsha.
Yes, I don't have anything to add to what all of you have shared about the what pain really can do in terms of the trauma, and as well as the part of it that I want to let you all know that you've really I have recommitted my goals related to making sure you do get the best care, teaching and reminding providers about the need for their humility in working with people with sickle cell disease, their need for expertise in knowing what it is they're doing, in their need to listen to you when you come, letting them know how you know what's going on in your own body. So I am re-energized to really push forward what happens when you do have to interface with the healthcare system to make sure that you really do get the best care. So I want to thank you for reminding us about, again, breathing, affirmations, spirituality, social support. And we have a lot to do on our side as healthcare providers. So I'm going to help my colleagues do better.
And with that, I think this is an excellent segue into wishing everyone a good rest of their afternoon. And the panel, wonderful job. We appreciate you. If you can just hang tight for the, when we do our ending, and just hang tight, we'll love it. Tech team, we're out. Thank you so much.